comparative purposes, just to understand this a little better, the two washers are here. I think they call them Bellevue washers, these two jobbers right here. The shim goes between this part and that, and that's what seems to be missing. And again, this one here has a broken snap ring, and I looked up the snap ring in the parts list, and it's some weird size, of course. And I did order a new bearing for this side last night because this one sounds horrible. So I'm not going to take this side apart yet until I have that new bearing in hand. I'll just use it as is. It wasn't making noise on the machine, so it can last another snowstorm if needed. And you can see the heavy wear over here where these roller pins weren't greased or anything, and there's a lot of wear on this part of the assembly. So let's go over to the parts tranny. Yeah, so this is the parts tranny, and you remember the other night I took the plate off of this thing, and the clutch was totally frozen on the shaft, which it still is. I'm gonna have to put a puller on here, I think, like a 3-jaw puller, and see if I can't get it off the keyed shaft. And as far as these bolts go here, these ones aren't worn nearly as bad as the one on the 817, so I might take one of those bolts out. Those bolts, coincidentally, I looked up, are $16 each, so not really in any rush to buy new ones. But this bearing on here is pretty nasty looking too. And yeah, we'll see if we can get a puller and strip that off of there. There's a snap ring on the end of it here, and there's a spring and a little washer, which I've taken out. So now I should be able to put the puller in there right down to the shaft. So let's see what we can do. I'm going to use this 3-jaw puller, and we'll see if we can get her off. Okay, so I got my puller. Okay, so I got my puller on here, and I'm just going to try it with a wrench for now and see if it works. I think it might be working. Let's see, it seems way too easy to turn. Oh, dude, it's coming off already. That is funny. I turned it about one turn and it's coming off, so alright, I guess it wasn't that bad as I thought it would be. Let's see. Oh, keep pulling with the puller because it doesn't want to come off by hand. What fun, huh? It must be those darn keys. Oh, I lost one of my jaws here. Let me back it off of here. I guess the spline is a far superior design for movement versus having this keyway on here. Yeah, we're close now. There we go. Ooh. Crusty shaft on there. So anyways, how's this clutch? This one's not so bad either. There's plenty of meat on this one. So let's see if we can get this bearing off of this one. Oh god, this bearing is really froze. It doesn't even want to turn more than this. So anyways, let's pull off this snap ring, and there we go. Now it's freeing up. Yeah, this bearing is shot. The plastic around the end here is all bubbling up like it's rusting out underneath it. So let's pull this one apart. Alright, so first we gotta take this snap ring off. See if we can maneuver that. It's hard to do on camera, so I'll take it off. The snap ring was really buggered in there. I ended up having to take a nail and hammer it to loosen it out of the slot. So let's see if I can get this apart. Let me see here. Let's give it. Probably needs a little tap with this hammer. I just tap it down while I hold it and see if we can get it out. Okay, so that came off, and you can see how shot this bearing is. And what do you know? Here's that magic spacer that I'm missing on the other one. So I'm going to have to take that clutch off of the 817 and put this spacer in there. And then hopefully we're not going to have all that noise that we did before. And if you look up on the IPL, these washers, everything, they're exactly the same parts as the newer splined clutch. That's really the only difference is inside of there. So anyways, yeah, too bad. That's how this one is. So we'll this part here that the bearing goes in is the same part as the newer clutch, and so that's not going to be wasted. We'll keep that, you know. And if we want to compare these again, we can see that, you know, those parts are the same. And in fact, this one is nicer than the one that's coming off of there. So maybe when we get the new bearing, we'll put it in the old whatever you call this piece, because it's nicer. So anyways, I got to go outside in the cold and drop the clutch off the tractor and see if we can harvest this ring out of this one and put it in the other one. I ended up taking the old bearing off this side because it was so shot, and this part is so worn, and the other bearing isn't that bad. After I turned it a few times, it freed up, so I'm going to go with it for now until I get my new one on order. And interestingly enough, this side didn't have a shim in it either, but the washers are tight, so I don't think I need it. And really strange, huh? But clearly the old clutch has the shim. So what I'm going to do is, this clutch has a lot of meat on it right here. Turns out that all this is the meat from this silver part out. And someone told me a new clutch is 5/16 of an inch thick. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this good one that was on the reverse side of the tractor, and we're going to move it onto the other side so it's on the forward side. And we'll put the one that's worn on the reverse. And I think that will do the trick. I'm going to put a little bit of grease in those splines before I put it on. And we'll bring the old one inside and we'll investigate that ring again on the washers. And we'll go from there. Okay, so we got the clutch back off here. And just to investigate here. Ooh, it's cold. So what's happening is that these two washers back here are like flopping around like crazy. So I'm going to take this back off and we're going to put the spacer on from the other one and see if that gives it enough, you know, like, oh, maybe that's the problem. Ah, new problem in paradise. So the real problem is that the hub itself, I think, is worn where it goes around the bearing, so there's play in there. So I can grab this whole thing and move it back and forth quite a bit. Like there's some play in there. Maybe 1/1000th of an inch or something like that. So I think that's more of a problem. Oh, you can never win, you know? So maybe if I put that spacer in there, it will tighten it up enough that it doesn't matter. But frustrating, huh? Frustrating. Investigate this some more. So if I take that bearing off, I can see that there's a pretty substantial ridge right here where it was worn off on the bearing surface. So, you know, how do you rectify that? I don't know. I think I probably need a whole new clutch assembly. So really the issue to me is that this surface is probably worn down a few thousandths more than the bearing diameter. The bearing is in millimeters, and if I look at this old one here that's off the keyed clutch, for example, there's a little bit of a ridge, but nothing like that. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll take my calipers out and we'll measure the old keyed clutch, and I can see even on here there's some wear where the bearing was, but I want to measure those two diameters and see what the difference is. And I also want to take and measure the inside diameter of my old say, of this bearing that was on the other side and compare it to my new replacement bearing there and see if that's the problem as well. Okay, so if I measure my the 8/17 clutch, the inside diameter here is 39.3 something millimeters for the most part. And if I go over to the splined the keyed clutch, I'm at 39.7. So we're off by, you know, some 40 millimeters. And if I go back over to the bearings here and I measure the new bearing, I think it's supposed to be 40. Let me see, it's hard to... 39, I got 39.73. What do you know? Let's see. 39.73. So this is a perfect size for the good clutch. Let me measure this old bearing here. Let's see. 39.5. Might not have been in the right spot. 39.62. So there's some rust in this one. 39.72. There we go. So I really feel that my main issue here is that the clutch itself in this area is worn beyond a usable spot. So I think I'm going to be on the hunt for a new clutch, new splined clutch. And I don't know if you can buy these new, but they're probably very expensive. I guess I can look it up and you know, see what it is. With my luck, it's a $200 part or some ridiculous thing like that. So we'll see what we can find. Okay, so putting that shim in there, tighten it up a little bit. It doesn't seem to be as bad now. I can't really grab it and move it. There's a little bit of wobble in here, which is in the bearing itself, it looks like. But in general, the slop against the shaft has been removed because that spring made this whole assembly tighter against the retaining clip. So I think we're going to put it back together and call it a day on this one. And you know, we'll see what happens. But I will continue to look for a used, you know, clip here. I'm sorry, a clutch assembly, just to have a good one in stock in case this one blows up on me. And I also decided to put the washers in from the old clutch, from the keyed clutch, because these ones here seem to be a little worn on the inside diameter as well. So anyways, that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching.